Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Falcon and Winter Soldier Spoilercast. Tis I, Captain Logan, and joining me this evening is my wonderful panel of other magnanimous, crazy reviewers I know. Look, it's Dan Torrey.
Hi,
Hello,
everybody.
everyone, and welcome. Hi, Dan. Oh, why do I hear myself? Who's playing my voice right now?
Oh.
I think it's me by accident.
Oh
Sorry.
god, I'm also playing it.
That's okay, Dan. I'm going through kind of Groundhog Day right now, and
You're
also
It
The Day
hadn't
Ghost.
loaded fully, so it wasn't playing. You almost got your voice, and then from Dan, and then from me. Would have been a huge cluster to start the show with. But yes, I am here too.
Hi, Austin. Thanks so much for being here, buddy. Connor had to cancel on us at kind of the last minute, unfortunately. We were supposed to have a four-man panel tonight. He was with, I think it was just me and him, actually, that did the initial How We Felt About it in the first two episodes of this, because Austin ended up not being able to make that. And now it's
Because
Austin,
Dan.
not Connor, and Dan. So,
Yeah.
Connor has a statement that he has asked me to read about this show, which I'm going to do a little bit later in the program for reasons that you will see when I start reading it. Because I figure that folks are a lot less likely to that really love the show to jump ship, even if Austin and Dan totally despise this show. If I don't read Connor's statement first, Connor was really not happy with the show at the beginning, and you'll see. You'll see. It's gonna be very interesting to read and respond to his comments. But anyway, this is a really strange experience for me. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys thought of it, and we'll speak to the audience, of course, as we always do. Guys, we're going to read as many comments as we're able to throughout the show. If you want to make sure that a comment or a specific topic of discussion pertaining to the show, particular aspect of the show gets talked about, you can leave a super chat in any dollar amount, and we will guarantee that we'll talk about whatever you want to with those. But we'll do as many pre-written things as they come up as we can as well. I never want to promise too much of that, because we tend to kind of get into a groove with our review, and we'll get 45 minutes in and wonder where the time went and not actually get to that many comments. So we're going to do as much of that as we can. But I want to start, as I always do, with round robin, best thing, worst thing, and initial verdict before we get rolling. So how did you feel about the thing walking out, and what are your favorite and least favorite things about the show? And I want to start with Dan, because we haven't heard from him at all yet on this show. So, well, and I guess we haven't heard from Austin on the show yet either, but I want to start with Dan, so that's what I'm going to do. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. So I think my best thing about the show is definitely the stuff that they did with Bucky. Bucky is like one of my favorite Captain America characters from the comics. So I was like eager to see his character explored more in the MCU, because I feel like even in the Winter Soldier movie and First Avenger, where they like set up like the fact that he becomes the Winter Soldier and stuff, I feel like he's more of a plot device than he is a character, and he's sort of like an instrument for Steve Rogers' character arc in the Winter Soldier movie. So I was eager to kind of dig into him as a person and like figure out what the MCU version of him is like, because I think Sebastian Stan is a good actor, and I think for the most part at the beginning of the series they do a really good job sort of showing, without it being too beat you over the head with it, how broken of a character he is, and the things that he needs to work on as a person to be able to come back from the terrible things he's done in his past. I liked all that stuff a lot, which I'm sure we'll get into more throughout the podcast. But my worst thing in the series is definitely the social commentary. I feel like this series suffers from trying to talk about a really serious and controversial issue in a way that will appeal to families and absolutely everyone. And I feel like they really. There are some things in the show which we'll talk about, I'm sure, that approached being interesting to me. But at the end, I feel like all of the social commentary stuff about race in particular, which is a big theme in the show, because Sam Wilson is a black man trying to be Captain America, and that's sort of like the crux of the story of the show. What does that mean for a black man to be Captain America and all that stuff? I feel like they didn't really do much with it beyond like surfacey stuff, which really disappointed me, because I felt like that could have been interesting. By the end, the show doesn't really come together for me. I liked maybe like the first four episodes, and less so as they went along. But by the last two, I was like, oh, it doesn't really come together by the end for me personally.
Okay.
Which seems to be a running theme with these Disney Plus Marvel shows. So hopefully that's not going to continue.
I mean, two does not a pattern make, but I'm
No,
with
I know.
you. There's reason to be concerned, maybe. Austin, how did you feel about the show? And give us a best thing, worst thing.
I felt pain. Um, no, no, this was maybe one of my most anticipated things of what they announced for Phase 4. And the very first episode, I was like, okay, I'm really liking Bucky in this because, like Dan said, I really liked kind of how they were dealing with him. I didn't like the Sam Boat plot. I felt like that was kind of like a CW type plot where we just were kind of wasting time. And then episode 2, I really liked, and then after that, it all completely fell apart. But my best thing, I'm gonna say my best thing are the performances for Walker and Zemo. I don't love what they do with Walker overall. Like I think the plot itself is fine. It's just execution. But I really like Wyatt Russell in the show, and he was actually the biggest thing I was excited to see because he was in a movie called Overlord from a few years ago, which I really loved, and he's great in it. And I also really like Zemo, and I don't love how they retcon him to just be a Baron now, but outside of that, like I still liked his presence in the show. Worst thing. It's probably going to be the leader of the Flag Smashers, maybe just the Flag Smashers in general, but obviously the leader is the one we focus on more because I feel like she's really miscast and just kind of awkward, and everything about the Flag Smashers is just like terrible. Just all of their scenes feel like we're wasting time, and that is like, just like I said earlier, just CW to me. Like it's just kind of crappy. I don't know.
I agree that she was really miscast.
Yeah,
She did no like menace or threat as a like character. I know that she has like superpowers and stuff, but I don't know.
there's a part where she's fighting Sam in the last episode where she's like, fight back, fight me, Sam. It's like, oh god, she's throwing like a child temper tantrum. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
See, I actually disagree with you guys. I don't think the problem is that she's miscast. I think the problem is, at least for me, like with so many other things with this show, just execution and lack of context. Like the problem
Well, that too, yeah.
Like I get what they're trying to do with that character. I understand why she doesn't have menace and foreboding, and she's not a typical standard like charismatic supervillain. She's not supposed to be charismatic. She's supposed to be a like modern like internet terrorist who's been like radicalized, and like the personality type they're going with looks like a lot of folks that happens to, and that end up leading groups like that. Like I like that she's like mousy and unassuming, and you don't expect her to be a super soldier, and she just thinks that she has to do that as a necessary evil, but she's not anything like that kind of character. But like with Walker, I don't know enough about her background. We're told a lot more than we're shown. I'm actually gonna read, before I get into a couple thoughts myself, a super chat from Tom real quick, which is really apt for what we're talking about right now. TH1 Tom gave us a $5 super chat. Thanks, buddy. I feel like they committed the ultimate sin in media. They told us, not showed us, why a group was disgruntled. I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I agree with much of what you said, Cap, because I think the idea of making a villain like that is inherently interesting to me. I guess when I said menace, maybe I used the wrong word, but I meant sort of like her radicalization and her ideology is not at the forefront enough for her to be scary to me. She's just kind of like talking on the phone and doing boring. Like I'm more bored with her than anything else. Like the menace I guess I was talking about was coming from like, oh man, like people like her exist sort of in the real world. Like obviously it's in a different context when there aren't superheroes and stuff. But I feel like so much of the way that she viewed the world was explained in a few lines and kind of in the background and not really the focus of the show. That was what I was disappointed about with her, at least. Maybe the casting wasn't the issue. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I just think if they
I
wanted...
agree with.
sorry, go
I
ahead,
was gonna
Austin.
say, Connor just put in the chat, and I agree with this. They compare her to Captain America, and she has no charisma or presence, and I think that's kind of like an issue for me too.
That's fair. I think the comparison that her compatriots are making to her with Captain America is...
She's Captain America of like the new kind of era.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's that she's a symbol, and it's a modern symbol, and so like a lot of the show is about how if you had a Captain America now, it would be a very different thing. It would be about different things, and there's that question of whether or not that person could be fully altruistic, or if they would have to be shades of gray, even if you still considered them a hero. And so that's what she's supposed to be for that side. But Dan, you're spot on. I mean, it just doesn't make for good television. That's the problem with it ultimately.
Yeah, like I think, and this is kind of inherent in the character that they're sort of adapting from, because I'm not the most gigantic Captain America fan. I can't admit to have read everything, but I've read some of Mark Gruenwald's run where the Flag Smasher is a prominent villain in that, and he's just an anti-nationalist, and that's kind of what these characters are, in that they want to abolish borders between countries and all those sorts of things. And I think the idea at the beginning that tied into that was like how Falcon was going over the border of a country, and they were like, if you don't get him before this point, we're not going to be able to get... Like, I understand what they were going for. I think it's just in the execution. It's kind of the point I was making earlier about the social commentary for me personally, and in it being disappointing. It's so surfacey. Like, it's like, these people are anti-nationalists, and then we like don't do much with it other than saying like this is their perspective. There's no exploration of those ideas, really, I don't think. Like, I don't know. I just wish many of the ideas in the show were more developed, because I think on paper many of them are interesting. But I don't know.
The show...
Yeah, execution's the biggest issue.
And from the showrunner's mouth, because I managed to watch about half of the making of featurette that they put on Disney Plus before we started the show. I wasn't able to finish it, but from the showrunner's mouth, from the beginning, they wanted this to be more of a character drama for Sam and Bucky, and I think if they put that more at the fore, like they're talking about. That they did, because a lot of the things that they say that they made, I don't agree that I'm seeing. And like, I think if they put that at the forefront, you could have had a looming threat in the Flag Smashers that we hardly saw, and that would have been potentially a great deal more effective. Like, I wonder if Carly Morgenthau shouldn't have been more like the Power Broker is, until we figure out what that is, of course. I wonder if she shouldn't have been like a Wizard of Oz type, where we don't know anything about her and what she looks like at all till toward the end, and then when we finally get to her, she's just a kid at a computer, and you're like, okay, that is the modern version of what that would be. Like, there are certain things that they don't give us up front, quick enough, and there are other things I think they should have waited on, and that's one of them. Like Dan, you've gotten me to this place. I think she just gets too much screen time. I think that's the problem with her. Like, less is more with a character like that.
I think it depends, like what, when I was watching the show, I kind of thought it was a missed opportunity that, so like, they didn't connect the subplots of Isaiah Bradley, the Falcon, and the main villain of the story in any sort of coherent way. Like, I think if they had made her a black person that's young and is not a nationalist for the same reasons that Isaiah Bradley doesn't like America, and Sam is the counter argument to those two people, and he is kind of like the person that says, yeah, there have been like grievous crimes committed against our people in the history of this country, but like that doesn't mean we can't move forward and do great things and try to make our society better. I think that would have been more, I don't know, more it would have resonated with me more, I guess. The anti-borders thing, I think, is somewhat topical, because like people talk about that on the internet and like on Reddit and stuff, I guess. But I don't know. That would be too controversial to like make a show in the family-friendly Marvel universe about those sort of things. Like you can't like sit down and watch a show with your kids about black separatism. Like, you know?
But then they sort of acted like that's what they made, but then by not really talking about it much, you're right, there's a line they're skirting. And DJ and I talked about this a lot when we did our commentary for Captain Marvel, where there's this, like, trying to make everybody happy thing by, like, putting, you know, certain, like gender politics and things kind of in there, really surface, so that, like, that side will be like, oh, good, you're talking about this stuff. But if we're not really gonna get into it and take some risks and really dissect it in a character way, I think you ought to leave it well enough alone.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the Winter Soldier movie is really good because it explores a contemporary, really important issue in American society in a way that's,
and it doesn't skirt it.
Nuanced. It doesn't at all. But the thing with that issue, I think that it's tackled was that's kind of like a universal concern for all Americans, and this is a very divisive topic. And Marvel wants to make their product appeal to everyone, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking, Dan, while you were saying that, it could have been interesting if we made Isaiah Bradley's son the leader of the Flag Smashers.
Yeah, something like that would have been interesting. Or if they wanted to combine characters, like it's his daughter, if they still wanted to make it a girl or something. Who knows? You know, whatever.
Yeah, because I mean, I think his son is like a member of the Young Avengers in the comics, but like you could have done something like that.
Is that Patriot the main, like, Captain America character in that? I haven't read a ton of Young Avengers stuff.
Maybe I can't remember. I've heard people talk about it though, because I'm not super familiar with the Young Avengers.
Same, yeah. I've read like a few arcs, but not a ton. It's interesting.
Dan, you were talking about how we don't have clear, like, thematic parallels by the end with a lot of the like separate political issues, but we're kind of acting like we do. The big thing I was super confused about, and I did sit down and watch this twice, and I still don't understand what it thinks it's doing with this. It's like it thinks it's drawing some kind of a parallel between like racial prejudice and oppression in the past and what is still lingering from that, obviously specifically with black people, and then it like that has some kind of, like, clear thematic correlation to what happened with the blip and people losing their homes.
Yeah.
And I do not know what the connection is. I'm very lost on this.
It's not executed well, but I think the connection is supposed to be, historically in the past, African Americans have been denied things like loans to buy houses by banks. That's like a thing that the federal government has tried to address with federal legal policy, and to varying degrees of success. We don't have to get into that, but anyway,
sure.
You know, like when that scene when Sam and his sister try to get a loan, and the guy is like, "Oh, you don't have good enough credit," but like she just assumes that he's being racist without, like, that being the explicit connotation of what's actually happening. And then I think the idea is supposed to be that's somehow connected to the Flag Smashers losing their homes too. I don't know.
But I don't understand that, because so two big things. And just while we're here, why don't we go ahead and mention this and go here, and then I'll roll time backwards and do my best thing, worst thing, and read Connor's statement. But this was some of the major stuff I wanted to mention, so I'm glad we're getting out of the way now, because this was the stuff, honestly, I was most nervous to even bring up and talk about, because I keep assuming I must be missing something, and I must be just a total moron that I did not see what this was. So, Dan, it seems like a complete false equivalency to me, because what is the reason, if you can even call it oppression, that that people with that act that's going to be passed would be losing their homes, is simply that they are living in homes that people who came back from the blip owned. Like, it's totally arbitrary. Like, those people are all, like, of varying, like, creeds and races and, like, and wealth and all kinds of stuff. And if you, like, either way you go, if you shaft one for the other, it's not fair. And I really don't like that when you get to the end of the show, there's no kind of, like, compromise or other solution presented. It's just, well, we can't pass that law, that's not fair. But then when that senator is like, but what about all these people that, like, that don't have places to go? Falcon just kind of throws his hands in the air. And it's never talked about after that. We never know what's going to happen to those people. And so, like, I don't get the correlation with that and like things that we've done unfairly to people because of class and race earlier, because like either side it's unfair. There's not a good answer at all with any of that. The answer to that isn't just treat people right, because because like the world moved on and got used to all these people being gone, and then they suddenly showed up. I also don't buy the premise in the first place. I don't buy that this is how we would even be handling this necessarily. And then the thing with Falcon is, wouldn't he be on the other side of that argument? Because he was like denied a loan because he came back, but Carly's whole thing is about people that were there already being unfairly treated. Like, they're on opposite sides of that whole thing, and that's never talked about. And then curiously, when they talk, Carly has a line where she says they're gonna take your home, and I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about, because that's not what the legislation was about. I'm very confused.
I think the idea is supposed to be, not, I'm not saying it's executed well, but I think the idea is supposed to be that they are on opposite sides, and Sam's speech at the end saying that like everyone from opposite perspectives needs to sit down and have a conversation about their differences and come to common solutions.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what it's supposed to be. Which is a good notion.
It is, but we also then need to see that happen. Because I'm not saying that the senators are right, that they should necessarily pass that legislation, but then there's no answer. There's no discussion of an answer. If the show ended with, we don't know what to do, this is just, it's nobody's fault. If the moral of the story at the end is, we're all screwed and it's nobody's fault, I could, I could live with that. That might sound kind of cynical, or it's really sad, but I would respect that, but it kind of plays like, because the senator didn't pass the thing, everything's fine at the end, and it's really oversimplified.
Well, Falcon's entire thing is he doesn't actually have an answer. His thing is just do better.
Yeah.
That's not an answer.
And he's oversimplifying things too. And I know a lot of people in the comments are talking about this, and we're going to have to get to this whole thing, but by saying that Carly is not a terrorist, because no matter what side she's on, she's absolutely a terrorist. And B, by saying to the senator, well, you could feed 1 million people with a phone call, and you could do this thing with an email. And I'm like, it's more complicated than that. That's not how that works.
No, this show is written for people who sit on Twitter and are like, if politicians actually tried to do things, they could fix the world in a day. But put no thought into anything. It's just be better politicians. Is the show written for little children? That's not a thing you can just, I don't know. It's ridiculous.
I tend to agree with you. I think, I don't know. I was particularly disappointed just with, it's just a missed opportunity. I like Bucky as the successor to Steve Rogers as Captain America in the first place, because I just think the character is more interesting. But if you're going to do a show about race issues, one of the things that disappointed me the most, looking back on it as a series, is in the second episode. I think it's the second episode where police think that the Falcon is they hassle him because the obvious connotation is because he's black, and they turned it into a gag, and it's MCU comedy about this really serious issue that's going on, and I'm not saying we need to have some sort of brutality of Falcon in the show, because I realize that the audience of that show in general is not Disney doesn't want to do that, but I guess I was just disappointed that it was just turned into a oh, this is funny kind of scene. I don't know. These are really serious things, I guess. And the Captain America movies have been the most serious in discussing the issues about American society of any of these movies, and that's why I like them the most. And I expected more of that, I guess. And they just didn't deliver.
Well, and I know Austin doesn't like this movie as much as I do, but I would say the second to that in handling that stuff well and nuanced, and at least to some degree, and just with a little bit of maturity, is Black Panther. And when you bring in Black Panther characters into this, and it's not handling that stuff as thoughtfully as that movie did, it's one of the things that makes it feel inauthentic to me. And again, one of the reasons it felt somewhat inauthentic is because I didn't buy some of the status quo after the blip in the first place. Like, I just don't buy that that's how countries are handling that whole thing, and I wanted to see more of it. I would like it's a little bit of that like Star Wars prequel problem of we're being told about all these people that are in like really dire straits because of like coming back to the blip from the blip and not being treated right, and vice versa. We don't see a lot of that, and that's kind of like when we're talking about we moved borders or we got rid of borders. You'd think the world would look really different than it did, and it's kind of just the way it was. Except we're told that we got rid of some borders and stuff. I don't know. So I would have expected it to be more mature about that stuff, I guess is all I'm saying.
Yeah. But other than the political, like, thematic stuff, I think in general the things that work about this show for me, at least at the beginning, are the stuff with Bucky trying to overcome the fact that he that he was like a brainwashed assassin for years. I genuinely liked the relationship he had with the Japanese old man at the bar, and like the scene where he tried to go on a date with, is that his granddaughter, I think.
I think it was just a girl working at the bar. Yeah.
Oh, for some reason I thought they were related, but
he just took the initiative because Bucky wouldn't. So he was like, I see him looking at her, I'm gonna try to hook them up.
Okay.
Whenever I ask any woman out, I always use their grandfather as a wingman. But I don't think that's what was happening in that scene.
I thought maybe like he was like, I thought like because he liked him so much and thought he was a good man, that he was like a good fit for his granddaughter or something. I don't know, but anyway, I really liked the date scene that they had. It was very slow paced, and they let the characters breathe. And Bucky at first is comfortable, but then like after a while it realizes that he doesn't have the emotional capacity to connect with people in a romantic or even friendly way sometimes, because of the things that he hasn't dealt with in his psyche. I really, really liked those scenes. And I wish the show was more about that stuff, I suppose. Because after the first couple episodes, like by the end of the show, I think Bucky is kind of an afterthought, even in the like final action scene of the show.
He's an afterthought, and his name's in the title. It's really awkward.
Yeah,
I totally agree with that. I mean, at least Falcon's name was first, so what they should have done is just had the Winter Soldier be like in really small print.
It should have just been the Falcon and the B plot. That's what it should have been.
Before we get into some of that other stuff, let me just really briefly throw out a best thing, worst thing, because I've already been talking about the show some, and you're getting a good... No, you're fine. And you guys are already getting a good sense of where I'm at with this, probably, but like I was saying earlier, my worst thing is absolutely lack of context, both in the political and social commentary stuff, but also with characters. Walker... Like, and I know this is Austin feels this way too. Walker is great on paper, but we just don't see enough of the like. We don't have enough stuff surrounding his motivations for me to fully understand who he is, especially once he starts getting kind of crazy after he takes the super serum, the super soldier serum and all of that. I think it's a mistake in the same episode that happens for that be the place where he's having that theoretical conversation with his partner about whether or not he would take the serum. It's like, that should have been a lot earlier, because it feels very afterthought to me, where it's like, oh, we're gonna do that now, I guess we should have this conversation. Like, it feels kind of like we're plotting him episode to episode, and that's a problem, because on paper I think he's really fascinating, and I'm not usually a big advocate for flashbacks, but he has that scene before Lamar dies and he loses it, where he says, the reason that I got all these accolades for being a soldier is was not worth it. Like, I had to like remember the worst day of my life, and I'm like, could I know more about that? Like, about the worst day of your life? And could we not be talking about that stuff this late? Because before that, the only sense we got that he was at all a loose cannon, and that, like, his heart was in the right place, but he was maybe a little bit unhinged, was just that line that Lamar has real early on where he's like, you can't just hit things anymore, John. And he's like, you're right, I'll have to stop doing that. Like, I didn't know that about him, and I think we need that stuff later. My best thing is on a second viewing Zemo, and I'm not even with Austin about retconning at this point. I'm actually fine with the Baron thing. Having not gone back and rewatched Civil War in a while, I'm actually a little bit worried that when I do that, I'm no longer going to be okay with this.
Well, that's
but
my issue. Civil War is the film I've seen the most, and I just don't think that fits.
I had a conversation with Eric about this, and Eric loves Zemo, and he's in the same camp as a lot of folks that he's one of, if not the best MCU villain. And he never super resonated with me. And on a second viewing, let me first say, Eric suggested that at least, and of course, Eric wanted him to be more comic book accurate in the first place. So if there is a little retconning going on, he's probably okay with that because of that. But a lot of people thought that he would become a Baron in this, and Eric was like, but it explains how he got his resources to do all the stuff he does in Civil War. So there's at least that. But like, he didn't resonate with me a lot until the second viewing of this, and I think I'm actually going to appreciate him more going back to Civil War after seeing this, because all the stuff he says in, I think, that third episode about, you know, power corrupting and the question of whether or not you are a supremacist inherently by being a super soldier, by being like an augment. Like, I'd love to see that character deal with, like, Khan and the augments in Star Trek. That was all really interesting, and again, by the end, it doesn't really culminate into enough, but all of his arguments about why the Avengers and the Nazis are not that far apart was kind of fascinating to me, and I liked a lot of his dialogue and his kind of diatribing. So anyway, that's my best thing, worst thing at this point. I also will throw my hat in the ring and say I do, at this point especially, like the Falcon costume, and I don't care what Austin says about it. I mean the Captain America costume at the end.
It amazed me with Zemo, though, that Zemo is more right about the villains than our main hero. and how, like, their power corrupts them. But
yeah, like, because the problem is, in that scene, I'm like, well, he kind of has a point, but then I'm supposed to be on the side of my main protagonist with Falcon, now Captain America, at the end, when he says, don't call her a terrorist. I can't make that leap with you, man.
I agree with Zemo, but it's like Zemo's the only one who's, like, being a real person right now.
And also, Falcon's the guy who in 6 seconds got her to talk like a supremacist.
Yeah, and she has a line where
took him no time at all, and she's like, "Wait a minute, you like baited me." And it's like, no, that was in your head, all right. But I mean, like, that's the problem. Is Zemo kind of has a point about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
No, I enjoyed Zemo for the most part in the show. I thought he was pretty good. I'm excited to see what they do with him in the future, based on the fact that he's, like, locked up in the raft and stuff. I assume maybe he's going to be a part of the Thunderbolts in the future. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I could see that.
Philip Kelton, I've heard some other folks say that. Yeah, Philip Kelton, why are the Avengers and the Nazis similar? And obviously, I'm not saying that they are. I'm saying that Zemo says they are, and he has, and like, the way he gets there, there's actually a logic to, and it's interesting. It just depends on if you see the Avengers as heroes or as like fascists, like he does. And so the deal is, at least what he's saying anyway, is that when people get too much of power, and especially a certain kind of power, like with the super soldier serum or something, they can't help but take over and see people as lesser than they are. And that's the way in which, in his mind, those are similar things. Actually, in his mind, the same things, maybe.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the Avengers
That's not me saying
create the murder bot that destroyed his nation.
Yes. And it's important to keep that in mind.
Not only did they, like, blow up most of his nation, but after Infinity War, like with the blip, like the borders of it get completely torn apart and it gets cannibalized by other nations around it. So from his point of view, like
you mentioned that to me earlier. Where are we told that? I don't even remember that.
it's at the end of episode 3. He talks about how like Sokovia basically doesn't exist anymore because the land was taken by other countries around it. Because
okay.
I was really hoping that we would turn Sokovia into Latveria and do something cool with that, but I guess that won't happen.
Dark Moonlight, I'm starting to feel like the MCU isn't for me anymore. I am sometimes feeling that way myself, and hate that I'm saying that. Isaac Farley, Zemo's mask came out of nowhere, didn't it? I know Austin wants to talk about this.
Because Zemo's mask is used less than Venom's face in Spider-Man 3, and we advertised on it. He wears it in one scene. Why is it even in the show? It's ridiculous. I don't know. Because I was super excited to see his mask, and then we didn't really get it, so...
And there was a lot of false advertising with Zemo because the trailers treated it like he would become the big bad. And Connor and I both agreed that would probably happen when we did the How We Felt About. And I'm not saying it's necessarily bad that it doesn't. I'm just saying that they sold it that way. Because he's got his whole speech about like why there shouldn't be superheroes and why that's bad. And that stuff's all fascinating. But it was sold like that was going to be like a big villain plot for him.
See, I always thought he was a red herring, and I figured Walker was going to be the main villain.
And then that didn't happen either.
And then we got the Flag Smashers, who were completely off my radar. I never could have imagined that one. You got me, Marvel.
You guys... I'm sorry, Dan, did you want to respond to anything before I go on?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and read Connor's statement now. He sent me a message. It says Falcon and Winter Soldier statement. And I'm gonna read it right now. It is as follows. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a stupid, politically incoherent mess of a miniseries from beginning to end, effectively serving as a 6-hour origin for Sam Wilson's new costume and little else. I do like what the show wants to be about, but nearly every aspect of the execution leaves much to be desired. The linchpin flaw with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is Marvel Studios' unwillingness to strain its long-standing relationship with the U.S. Armed Forces. Sam and Bucky seem to blame John Walker for being the new Captain America instead of aiming their anger, frustration, and disappointment at those who put the shield in his hands. Because of this, you never see Walker given orders. You never see the higher-ups. The conflict that takes up the middle half of the show feels like an isolated and irrelevant tiff that only serves to kill time. And Bucky ends up looking like a 5-year-old. There's a few bright spots, such as some of the performances. Anthony Mackie is doing some decent subtle work. Daniel Bruhl is delightfully hammy as the clone/identical twin of his Zemo character from Civil War. The only way I can rationalize such a retcon. And Carl Lumbly is absolutely magnetic as Isaiah. Sebastian Stan does what he can, but he's given dead weight in titular character form. Isaiah Bradley is the only through line that I can say was good without an asterisk. The way his perspective informed Sam's struggle was valuable and felt like it was imported from a different, much more mature show. But Aaron Kellyman is absolutely awful, sorely miscast as maybe the all-time worst Marvel villain there is. I hated her. I hated the indecipherable motivations and rhetoric of the Flag Smashers, and I hated the new Super Soldier Serum that gives casting directors a break so we can cast soccer moms as super soldiers. I hated the ugly cinematography, the jumbled editing. By the way, I only skimmed some of this, so some of this I've not read yet. And the ill-defined stakes of the action sequences. At least the Captain Falcon costume looks pretty sweet. This is the nadir of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I will be shocked if they produce anything this bad again. I have not disliked a superhero adaptation from the big two this much since the theatrical cut of Justice League in 2017.
Is that the end of the statement?
That's the end of the statement.
Can I just summarize his point as Marvel do better?
I just wish he'd have told us how he really felt, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, he was definitely holding back there.
Anything from that you guys want to piggyback off of?
I don't think so.
Yeah, there's so much.
He hit a lot of points, of course, that we had already, and some things that we've already agreed with or disagreed with. I want to talk for a minute about Isaiah Bradley, because I kind of agree with him that's that's one of the better through lines, and there's not
Sure.
too much to complain about with it. But I don't know. I kind of had some questions with it. First of all, I don't know if you agree with this, either of you guys, but I wish the racial issues had been more upfront from the beginning, because I felt like that kind of slowly took the show over and didn't feel like it was real present from the beginning. And when I say slowly, it kind of blindsided me. Like when we get into that scene with, like, I know that we were dealing with a little bit of that stuff early on, but it felt like it was like subtly integrated, not like the show. When it, like, I like the stuff in that second episode about race, but like when suddenly he goes into like they'll never make a black man Captain America, I'm like, whoa, like when was this show about this stuff? And I just thought that some of the background with that was like really hackneyed, and if you think about it too much, it really falls apart. Like we're supposed to believe that, I don't know, we do this, and again, I'm not saying that I just want a bunch of flashbacks to flesh this stuff out, but I think because it's all in exposition, there's a hope that we can kind of like skirt around it and throw just some easy explanations out at the audience, and we will not notice that there's some stuff that's way too easy and maybe doesn't make sense. We're supposed to believe that when Isaiah Bradley gets experimented on by the government, being the only person that has the super soldier serum because they're hoping to make more, and because it's the 60s, and I guess the idea is that they wouldn't make a black man Captain America, so instead they're going to experiment on him. Honestly, I didn't fully buy that whole thing. Like, no, they wouldn't have made him Captain America, but I'm not sure if there was a white guy that was Captain America right then that they wouldn't have done the same thing to him. That's a discussion we can have, but I wasn't sure about that whole thing, because like the 60s is very different than the 40s during World War II. If they had Steve Rogers. Was it the 50s? Okay, but if they had, I guess the point I'm making is, if they had Steve Rogers right then, after World War II, and he was the only super soldier, and they thought, and they really wanted to make more, and they were trying to make an army, are we sure they wouldn't have done the exact same thing to him?
Like put him in prison?
Yeah, I'm just asking. Or at least, if not put him in prison, at least do the experimenting on him thing. Like, I don't know that they would have had a Captain America in the 50s necessarily. It's just a question I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all kind of vague. Like,
it's really vague.
So I'm not sure. Because you guys watched it recently, refresh my memory. What is the reason that they end up putting him in prison in the first place? I don't really remember.
They just it's just an excuse. Like there's not any real reason. It's just he's the only person with the super soldier serum, and they want to make more. That's it. That's all we're given.
Interesting.
And so they're experimenting on him. Sorry, this is what I was getting at. And he falls in love with a nurse that this kind of old gem that takes pity on him, right? And the way he escapes is that she just fakes a death certificate, and then they fake his death, and then he leaves. And it's like this really big top secret thing that the U.S. military is doing, and you're telling me that like that would work? That he'd be able to get out like that? They're not monitoring him like really closely? And I asked my wife about this, and she was like, "But also, if they thought he was dead, wouldn't they experiment on his cadaver? Like, how does he escape? It doesn't make any sense."
That I feel like that should have been flashbacks in the show too.
Yeah.
Like his story.
Well, I feel like I need it if they're gonna come up with that kind of BS like exposition in dialogue.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I didn't notice that until a second viewing, but I was really paying attention to that the second time, and I was like, wait a minute, this is dumb. This doesn't make any sense.
And yet his
Oh,
escape
Isaac
from
Farley
that,
says he didn't fall in love with the nurse. I thought he did. Oh well. Anyway,
I thought
maybe I'm
that
wrong
was in
about
there
that,
too, but
I thought he said that. Was he talking about someone else then, right after that, when he was talking about how much he loved whoever her is? I don't know. It's in that conversation.
and yet even like it's like a throwaway line. It's only slightly less developed than Zemo's escape from prison.
That's fair.
Which they completely brushed through.
I think the
And
idea
they actually
of that
show some of that.
is where it approaches being interesting for me. Like, I do think the juxtaposition between, like, you know, how much different it is for Sam being a super soldier in these current times versus what Isaiah Bradley went through, and in some ways the similarities between those two experiences, I think, should have been the crux of the thematic stuff about race in the show. And I think that would have been interesting, but they don't. I don't know. He's not in enough of the show. It's not explored enough.
Well, and sorry, I don't mean to correct you, Dan, but I just know you're gonna get 1,000 comments, so I'll just go ahead and say it. You mean Sam as Captain America, because he's not a super soldier.
Well, yes, yeah, definitely.
I also hate how like Rhodey's in the show, and we never address that he was the Iron Patriot and was branded to that for PR reasons, and was like protecting the president, and we never talk about that. Like, I understand the Iron Patriot's not Captain America, but he was
a mascot in the same way.
Yeah, exactly. He was still wearing the stars and stripes and everything.
And how did he feel about
never
that?
Come up. Yeah,
because in Iron Man 3, I didn't
in the show.
Yeah, and in and I thought it was really strange that he didn't come back at the end, because it seemed like the way we were paying off everything at the beginning was just by bookending with it and doing a bunch of different things in the middle.
That's basically what Bucky is, where it's like he's dealing with this Japanese guy at the start, doesn't do anything with that through the middle, and then he deals with it at the end. So yeah, absolutely. And I was expecting Rhodey to show back up, at least in the last episode.
I just didn't get the sense in Iron Man 3 that he was that uncomfortable with that whole thing. But it's been a while since I've seen that. And if he was, it seemed like it was more just because he liked being War Machine. Like, I don't know how much of it had to do with, like, you know, it's hard for me to, like, be patriotic and be the mascot with, like, the history of, you know, race in America.
Well, yeah, because the Iron Patriot thing is paralleling the Mandarin, where they switch him to be, like, the big PR thing for the public. That's what the people need to see. But we never actually talk about it with this. Yeah,
I agree 100% with what Dan said at the beginning of the show. I am not saying that the show shouldn't have been about those things, and that you know, I'm disliking a lot of things about it because it's political. I'm saying because it wasn't handled as maturely as it could have been. Dan, I know that Austin is not with you and I on this, but like, you and I really liked the racial politics in Watchmen, and this, like, and at the beginning of that show, it has context. It establishes that stuff and what it's about, and it gives us background, and it opens with a massacre that informs the whole thing. And this doesn't do any of that. Like, at the very least, it's a problem that a lot of people are left out that like, frankly, Bucky, and he says this in the show, himself doesn't appreciate, because he didn't have the experience of a black man growing up in America. An audience that doesn't have that experience is not going to relate to a lot of the stuff in the show, and it's the show's responsibility to give us a little bit of context.
Sure, yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, like, I think the racial stuff in Watchmen is really well handled, because it's sort of about how the traumatic events that happened to African Americans in the past affect the present in very interesting and pertinent ways. And I think this show also wants to be about those kind of things, but I think I don't know, it's just too dark of an issue to tackle in the MCU, I think. Like,
but see, what sucks is and I know this is not canonical anymore, and it was R and everything, but like,
Yeah.
what's rough is at one time we all thought Luke Cage was actually part of this universe, right? And that show handled this stuff beautifully for the most part. So at one time I felt like the MCU had tackled this stuff, and it makes it even harder when I see something like this where it's watered down, because I feel like the MCU should be able to deal with this stuff in an organic and mature way.
Yeah.
And why even bother with it when Luke Cage did it so much better and at one time was part of your universe?
Yeah, I honestly think the people that like decry the show for being political are a little naive in the sense that Captain America's always been a political character. Like his first appearance is him punching Hitler. You know, like
it's just all execution.
I want it to be political. I was curious to see if they would go to some of the places that I was told that the Falcon Cap series from a few years ago did, which is apparently a super political book. I read the first issue of that and liked it quite a bit. And so like I don't know much of that book, and so I didn't have a lot to compare it to. The show took the costume and took he talks a lot about how he's a black man wearing the Stars and Stripes. That's what it took. It was those two things. And like I kind of wanted it to go to those places, but it needs to. But I have to buy it. And I don't know. I also really wanted the MCU to deal with the aftermath of the blip, and we finally have done it. And I just don't buy what they're selling, and it hurts my feelings because I'm really glad they went there. But again, it's really super oversimplified.
Yeah, I think the inherent interesting thing about Sam Wilson as Captain America is just his different perspective from Steve Rogers. Like, I think, you know, as a person who's a World War II veteran, a white person, like why they would be proud of America is sort of like obvious. And the question, like why Sam Wilson would be proud of his country, it's just a different answer. And I think exploring that is what this show should have been. And it's not really about any of those things. That's why I'm just excited about it.
Take Winter Soldier out, make this the Falcon and the War Machine, and then do more stuff with that.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. Or Falcon and the Iron Patriot, if he still wants to wear that costume in this. Who knows, you know?
But I also think, and I mean, that's not a bad idea at all. Or just have a straight-up Falcon show where, like, Winter Soldier is a background character, like he basically is anyway. Or at least
take his name out of the title, and he can still have the role that he does. He's not a main player really at all.
Absolutely, and then you can actually I don't want to say I don't mean to say diminish, but you could actually lessen his role a little bit, and it would and we wouldn't be like, why does he keep showing up? Oh, because his name's in the title. But I also think that that what you guys are after could have still been done in the same show with Winter Soldier as a 50-50 co-protagonist, dual protagonist, because in different ways, each character in the show that either has the super soldier serum or is a super soldier or wears the costume is like a perversion of Captain America. And Falcon is like the positive. Perversion's a horrible sounding word for what I'm saying. I can't think of a better word. Everybody else is a perversion. Falcon is a flip of it, because he has the same, like, moral ideals that Steve Rogers has, but he comes from a different background, and most importantly, doesn't take the super soldier serum. And comparing him to Winter Soldier, who was forced to take it, and the kind of tragic narrative that he goes through, and the road to redemption he has, and then Carly, who is a straight-up full-on perversion of that. Like, the thematic connections to all of that are really, really obvious, and the show just does not pull them out. But there's no reason that you couldn't have done all of the interesting racial politics in exactly that show.
Yeah, I agree. I think also, like, you know, this could have been interesting in the sense as well, like Bucky is a man out of time, just like Steve Rogers, and we don't do a lot with that either. You know, like Bucky is a character that grew up even like before Isaiah Bradley was alive. So like his perspective on this is potentially really interesting too. And you know, the only thing they really do with it is Bucky is sort of ignorant to and Steve were ignorant to the fact that giving a black man the shield would mean very different things than giving it to a person that's blonde, has blonde hair and blue eyes like Steve Rogers. Um, I wish that that was a little bit more explored as well.
Good point. Yeah, that like the fact that he's a black man probably played some role in why he gave it to him. I also think that from Steve Rogers' perspective, regardless of skin color and background, between those two, it's gonna go to Falcon because Winter Soldier just has been Winter Soldier too recently, and for all the reasons that he doesn't want, the shield at this point. Like he thinks there's too much darkness in him. He blames himself for too much of what Winter Soldier did. If at some point he is worthy of the shield or it makes sense to give it to him, it's not yet. I would say that, and I wish that the show talked about this. I think that the idea of the show is supposed to be, whether you buy the arc or not, that by the end, Winter Soldier, Bucky, as Bucky Barnes, apart from Winter Soldier, has finally come out of the ice. At the end of this show, it took that long. Like, he has to live in the world with his own, like, full-on identity for a while before it would make sense to give him the shield.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that Brubaker does it in the comics is he kind of like has Bucky becoming Captain America as a thing he has to grow into and live up to, and that's like his redemption arc. Like he's not good at it at first in the way that this Bucky would not be good at it when he takes the shield on, and like he views that responsibility as something that he has to live up to and is constantly struggling with. I'm not Steve. I'm not as good as him. I've done terrible things. All of that kind of stuff, and I think that is really interesting too. But
yeah,
that's not the direction they chose to go. So
yeah. Oh, maybe I'm wrong about this. Mr. Roboto claims in a super chat that Bucky didn't take the serum; it's just the metal arm. I thought he had both. I thought he did have some version of the serum.
Hydra did tests on him. Yeah.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
He has some version of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Real quick before we get to super chats, just before I forget, there's
Sure.
one big point I wanted to make. This is my last major thing with Carly and the Flag Smashers, and that is I wanted this show, and I don't think this is me like rewriting the story or asking for something that it just didn't give me, so I'm not taking it on its own terms. At the beginning, it really seemed like the direction they were going was a story about corruption, and that when we lost half of the people on the planet, we finally became less divided and had a common goal and came together more. And I want Dan's hoodie, by the way, because that's an awesome hoodie.
Okay.
I just noticed what you were wearing. It seemed like the idea was
You should have been in this show. That would have made it better.
we were less. We had gotten less corrupt. We got some of that out of our system finally, and we were starting to make some of the moves that we always needed to, but we couldn't until we had like a big bad guy plot that like took us back to brass tacks and got rid of the infrastructure, right? And then everybody comes back, and then it becomes too much business as usual. I thought that's what the story was going to be about, and it really isn't. And I think it is a mistake. And I never blanket statements say, if this line of dialogue I came up with isn't in a show, the show doesn't work. But I'm going to do that now. I really am. How does Carly and nobody else in the Flag Smashers ever say Thanos was right in this show? That it's preposterous that that's not there, because that's basically what they're talking about. That's basically what they believe is that when like things were better when Thanos got rid of half the universe, and when we brought everybody back, it was back to business as usual. And I have heard that originally their whole plot was supposed to be a big virus that would have killed a lot of people, and they got rid of that because that plot because of COVID, so it became just a generic like hostage plot. If that's all true, it sounds like they were also trying to do what Thanos did. How does nobody ever say anything like that in this show?
Well, the virus thing, I don't think it was that they made a virus. I think it was because they're stealing vaccines and stuff in the show. So I've always thought that if the vaccine or if the virus thing were true, it was more so like they couldn't get access to supplies. But obviously we don't really know.
Sure. Well, and I may be wrong about that, but like But do you guys agree that like that's basically what they're saying? It's weird that they don't talk about Thanos.
Yeah. Do people in like everyday people in the MCU know about Thanos?
It would be weird if they didn't when I mean I'm not sure, but it would be weird if they didn't when Sam at the end brings up Mad God in a speech to the world.
Yeah.
Oh, and like Darcy references Thanos
And Darcy knows all
WandaVision,
kinds of
so-
crap that you would have to be an Avenger and there to know, but that might be
Well,
because she knows
talks
Thor.
about it like she saw the movie.
Yeah, no, I know, but
Yeah.
that might be because she knows Avengers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the answer to that question either. I was just asking because I don't like the status quo of the world like during Endgame and Infinity War is very vague too. So
Jen and I just can't buy that it would be business as usual after the death of half of the universe for 5 years. I'm with you. I don't buy that either, but at least if that's the status quo, that would be the natural place to go with it. Like, I would still have issues with the start of it.
Yeah, well, they wanted the snap to be really important, but we also can't move too far away from the real world because we want the MCU to look like the real world. So we gotta like half-ass it.
I mean, like Marvel has always tried to be the world outside your window. Like Stan Lee, that was the original pitch for the Marvel Universe. And like, if they cut a virus plot because it was too similar to the real world, like, I think that's a mistake, personally.
Yeah, for sure.
When I suggested that Thanos was right thing, Cinematographic says because Thanos was never right. Yeah, of course, but they seem to think he was. Even if they don't know about Thanos, they definitely think that was a good thing.
Well, yeah, because they even talk about how they preferred life during the blip. So even if they don't know Thanos' ideology and stuff, they at least agree with that sense, and that they want to bring life back to what it was like during the blip.
So yeah, I mean, if they don't know about Thanos, obviously that line's not going to be in there, but I feel like the sentiment should be more than it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was the thing I could not stop thinking about while I was watching that show.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Faux show.
Faux show.
Let's go ahead and go through some super chats. Oh, hey, real quick, Dan, what did you think of Falcon's costume at the end when
I
he
thought
becomes
it was
Captain
terrible.
America? Oh, you thought it was
I thought
terrible?
it
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. You guys
Take that in your face, Captain.
I'm losing this 1 out of 3 poll here.
You're
I
saying-
don't know. I've never liked the Falcon Captain America costume in the comics either because I feel like it's just the Falcon costume with the like stars and stripes motif painted over it. Like I don't know. I just feel like it's weird. Like it just looks strange to me. I don't know. I'm not a fan of it, but I also wanted Bucky to be Cap, and I was Cap costume. So maybe I'm biased. Clearly,
Some
I
of
don't
this is
know.
going to come down to taste. Now we can just play our fanboy cards and be like, I've always loved Falcon, and he was my favorite character. I don't know if he still is, but because I feel weird about him to some degree at the end of this, but I think the show throws him under the bus. I don't think it's Mackie or Falcon's fault exactly. But there's a really
I
good
want
chance,
to
by
see
the way,
this
that this
new-
gets another
with,
season
like-
under a different title.
with like hanging out with Bucky and like repairing the boat and like Bucky hanging out with like his sister's family and stuff. Like that stuff was cool.
Yeah, you get stuff like the cute moment where he's like holding the kids up with his robot arm while he's talking to somebody.
Yeah.
That's fun. I didn't
Yeah.
mind him hitting on Sam's sister. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, me either. Like I would like to see them get together. That'd be awesome.
Me too.
You know?
I
Yeah,
honestly would have been
if their
fine with that.
grandfather was still alive, he could have wingmaned for Bucky.
No, Dan, you're right. Some of it's going to come down to whether you actually like that costume in the first place in the comics. I always thought it looked kind of cool. I don't know, but
That's fair.
like some people think it looks too armored. They always do. Like the Captain America costume is that way also. Like that's what it was going to look like if we did it in that universe. I don't know. I thought it looked.
I don't know.
Kinda
To me,
have
he
to-
looks like one of those like 12-inch toys that you can get for kids, where they can only move their arms like that. So every time he shows up, I'm like, oh, he's like a really crappy dollar store toy.
Well, and the thing that I never really understood about Falcon Cap in general is he doesn't really need the shield. Like we see him blocking things with his wings in this show and in the comics, and he can like shoot things out of his wing. Like he
Yeah,
doesn't really need it. It's
They
kind
make
of
such a big
useless.
now
deal
his
out of
wings are
this.
vibranium.
They make such a big deal out of the symbolism of the shield that I think it's just if you can't be Captain America and not carry the shield. That like that's the thing that legitimizes him when the government doesn't. I guess is all it is, but I wouldn't even use it that much if I were him, Dan. I would just string it on his back and use what he's got already.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then the second a new Thanos comes, he'll get punched once, and then he'll be dead, and then Bucky can be Captain America.
we can only hope. You know, I'm hoping.
Guys
Lucky
You heard it here
to
first,
different
folks.
You guys
Dan's
want
waiting
Falcon
for
to
Falcon
die? Where's that eject button?
I think
Okay,
that
I'm
red
gonna.
button to hang up.
I'm
I
gonna
think
no,
it's
don't
that.
hang up, don't hang up. I'm gonna go ahead. I was just kidding. I'm gonna go ahead and read some super chats now. We're an hour in. This is about when this usually happens with live Spoilercast. Let's go ahead and do this. Mr. Roboto, $2 super chat. Were there feelings in the hallways in the show? Is there something he's referencing that I'm forgetting, Austin?
Fighting in hallways.
Fighting?
Is
He
that what
said
it means, like the
feelings.
Netflix thing.
He
No, I
said
mean like, is it a typo?
it might be a typo.
Like, because the Netflix, like obviously every single fight was in a hallway because those shows were very cheap.
Did you guys feel at all that were you guys getting at all flashes from Netflix Marvel, especially some of the later stuff with this? Because particularly in the last 3 episodes, I was a lot.
I wasn't thinking about that in particular, no, but maybe I just like maybe I just wasn't noticing it. I don't know.
Well, I was super glad that Marvel took inspiration from Batwoman because I love that show. And especially because season 1 of Batwoman like refuses to catch the villain for no reason, and she like kind of is like cool with her killing people.
Oh no!
And then Falcon's kind of like that here.
No,
Thanks, Marvel.
it's not the same thing. It's really not. I don't like that he says she's not a terrorist, and I think he sympathizes with her possibly a little bit too far, but he doesn't go as far as to being okay with the fact that she's killing people.
No, I was being hyperbolic.
I know you were. I know you were, but remember, we're on YouTube, and there are people who don't understand sarcasm or hyperbolicness. So.
No, you heard it here first, folks. I would much rather watch Batwoman than anything in the MCU.
And by the way, the reason I said hyperbolicness and not hyperbole is because. Wait, really?
No.
Is also because of degeneration in language, and I assume there are also people on YouTube who don't know what hyperbole is. But this is not me saying that our main audience is stupid or doesn't know words. It's just there's always people that come out of the woodwork that leave comments that don't understand things you said that I thought everybody would know what I was talking about. Here's $5 is back. Hello, sir. We need new heroes. Ones suited for the financial crisis we're in. Donations are nothing without wallets that give them meaning. Here's $5. Thanks very much. Here's $5. We really appreciate you, sir. As always, Thomas Ledbetter, $5 super chat. I think the politicians maybe are so caught up in the complexity that they resign to fixing the problem at all, but the follow-up is too simplified. Well, and that's the thing that happens, certainly, where it's like it's more about like passing a bill and saying you did something than actually doing something. But the problem is that's a pretty severe bill, and it just doesn't like it's not simplified in the way that I would expect a like legislation like that to be. And I wonder, Dan, if you agree with me on that, where I would think that it would just be like ineffectual before it was anything.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Sorry, can you repeat the question? I was just confused as to what he was asking about.
Well, he just says, I think the politicians are maybe so caught up in the complexity that they're resigned to fixing the problem at all, but the follow-up is too simplified.
Oh, what problem are we talking about?
Well, he's talking about the bill that Carly is trying to stop from being passed.
Oh, I see.
Where their simplified answer is just kick a bunch of people out of their homes and then let people that came back get their homes back.
So the real answer is more simplified. do better.
Exactly.
Like cartoon logic, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I didn't think that deeply about it because I don't think the writers of the show did. So
That's
You did a good job writing this Twitter.
Yeah.
Jedi Knight, $2 super chat. I want to see Zemo interact with Magneto.
Yeah, that would be awesome, actually.
All the good ones end in O.
Yeah, they do.
That would be really interesting for obvious reasons. Yeah, especially because it would be, you know, a power anti-power fight.
See, I always said if the MCU wants to do Magneto and don't do the World War II thing, the thing I would want them to do would be to make him like a black person in the United States. But I feel like after watching this, I'm like, I don't want them to do that because they won't handle it with any like in any interesting way or like in a subtle way that discusses his philosophy. I don't know. But I guess we'll see.
Well, we've been told recently that Captain America 4 is supposed to be written by these writers, and that's of course concerning. I want to know how much of what happened with this show was compromised because of A, having to shut down filming because of COVID, and B, the fact that they changed the ending because they felt like it looked too close to COVID. How much better of a show do you think this may have been, Austin? Or do you think it would have just been like not great, not nuanced enough in a different way?
Yeah, it's hard to say because we don't really know enough about it, or because I think it's still all just rumor whether that's even true. So it's really hard to say. Yeah,
we do know they had to shut down production, but I don't know if scripts changed because of that.
Yeah, but the stuff that's here is bad enough, like in places where I don't know if like you could make it better by adding more stuff into it. I don't know. It depends on what it is, because stuff like Walker, like I like Walker, but we get like the jot notes of his character as opposed to just the full character.
Yeah, he like seems. We didn't really talk much about Walker, but obviously he's a big.
Yeah, no, we got to get to him and the Wakandans as well.
Yeah, but I'm with you, Austin. I feel like like at the beginning of the show, Walker seemed like a pretty decent guy, and then they almost immediately turn him into like a character who is not suited for this responsibility at all. And I get what they're going for. I just feel like we're not informed as to why he changed into like the progression, I guess, from him being like a kind of standard military veteran to like this megalomaniac is very fast, and we don't see most of that.
It's so rushed. It happens a week or two after he becomes Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my issue too is that like when we first see him, he's talking about how like he doesn't know Cap, but he really wants to like live up to him and all this stuff. And I think that's really interesting. And that's not just him saying that, like that's behind closed doors with him and Lamar.
Yeah.
And like you get to the end of that episode where he's like, okay, Sam and Bucky, like get out of my way, when they're complete jerks to him through that entire episode. And the only reason they're doing it is just because he's not Steve Rogers. And like I understand their motivation, but I also think that like he's being perfectly reasonable to them. And then you get to that episode, the end of that episode, and the show goes, okay, well now he's the bad guy, so like he's going to be a jerk from now on.
Yeah.
And like it really sucks. There needs to be more of like us watching him slowly realize that he can't live up to Steve Rogers, which I think is a really interesting story.
Yeah, there should have been, and I think you can handle this in a mature way. To some degree, I think it probably should have been a jealous thing. Like we're told simultaneously that his, and I like this a lot, his heart is absolutely in the right place. He wants to be as close to Steve Rogers as possible. He also understands that he is not that guy. But he also has too much Tony Stark in him. we get that, and I think this is great. We get that exchange where I think Sam says, or I can't remember who it is, Sam or Bucky, one says that he wouldn't make the sacrifice play, and he basically has the same response that Tony does when Steve says that to him in Avengers, which is like I would just find a way to not have to make the sacrifice. Like I would just disarm the bomb. He says,
Well, no, thing, yeah.
I'll explain.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. But I'm just saying it's very similar because he's saying the same thing. He's like, well, no, I do jump on bombs. It's just I have a way to not die. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I've got a helmet. It makes that not happen. Like, why do I have to sacrifice myself? And then you have that line way later of there's never been another Steve Rogers from Zemo, and yeah, like I think you just need a gradual degeneration with that guy. I also wonder, and tell me if you guys agree with this, if he shouldn't have already been Captain America for a while before the show started.
I kind of wish that they gave him his own character-focused show, to be honest.
That's what I want, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's, like, we almost should have gotten, like, it's a TV miniseries or a movie or whatever, like, about John Walker and, like, who he is as a character and why he's not able to take over the mantle in an effective way, and then Falcon takes over after that or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because I feel like simultaneously the show is too short because I feel like there's a whole episode missing between the last two episodes. And also that there's material that is kind of wasting time that we just don't need at the beginning. I said when we did the How We Felt About that it would have been wonderful if the show had started with Walker at the beginning of that second episode going out onto that field. That would have been a wonderful introduction to this show. And I wish it could have started there. But I'm also wondering if it might have been more effective if the show starts with Falcon getting up one day, watching TV and being pained to see yet another news broadcast about how great the new Captain America is. Like if he had been doing it for a while, and then we're led to believe that like he's doing it too well, and that's part of what's driving Falcon crazy. And then we go to Walker, and slowly we realize he's not cut out for this like he thought he was. Like I think the story kind of starts in the wrong place. And then I think it's missing some meat at the end that we actually needed before we get to the ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we get stuff like the Wakandans beating up Walker, which we're all supposed to just laugh at, like Sam and Bucky do. But I'm like, I'm not laughing at this guy. Like he didn't do anything wrong in this scene. Like you're only wanting me to do this because he's not Steve, and
well,
like, I don't care.
Austin, do you agree with what Connor said in the statement he wrote that we don't deal enough with like the people who picked him? Like why are we blaming him for just taking a job?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also don't understand why they don't try to make a new Captain America after he fails. Like they just drop it and let Sam take the shield. But when they're at that court hearing, they're like, you have to bring us the shield, and the only answer we get is Madam Hydra being like, well, they don't technically own it. But why would they then stop trying to get the shield back just because somebody else said that in a different scene? Like, why don't they just try to start again? It's so bizarre to me. I don't know. I mean,
maybe the answer to that question is supposed to be U.S. Agent, where it's like they're not going to try that again, so now they're going this like covert direction, because we don't know really how involved Madam Hydra, who's never called Madam Hydra, actually is in regular government, right? Like,
oh, I didn't get the sense she was with the government at all, but maybe that was just me.
I don't know what she is, but looking at the behind the scenes stuff, I think the show thinks she's with the government. I'm just not sure. I'm honestly not sure.
Yeah.
She was also, by the way, introduced far too late.
Yeah, well, she's only got 2 scenes. That's it. It's just, we're probably building up Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers.
Speaking
See
of
you later.
Too, I also think that the stuff with Sharon Carter, like turning evil, is not very well handled at all. I don't understand why so like I don't understand why any of this happened. I don't
I don't think
understand
it makes sense.
why Steve Rogers didn't like help her. I don't understand why, even if he didn't, she blames him and like becomes a criminal and like becomes a supervillain. Like the whole thing is just super underdeveloped, and I feel like it's just kind of like for a shock reveal at the end of the show.
And it's
Uh,
not even built like that. It's just like, oh, you're the power broker, and then the scene keeps going. Like there's no
yeah,
like, even in the show, it's just kind of like, whatever, we don't care.
yeah. I don't know. It's just I feel like a lot. There was like that. Which, even in the comics, it's a little weird. Like, Steve Rogers' main love interest is like the descendant of the woman that he used to be in love with when he was in the 40s. That's kind of weird. And like, people thought that was weird in, the movies where she showed up. So, I feel like they just like changed her into like a villain so they could like get rid of her. I don't know.
I don't think they've gotten rid of
I
her.
hope
I think
it's
they'll keep bringing her back, but yeah, I think they threw her under the bus because, like you said, people thought that was weird, and also people didn't like her. Like I heard a lot. One of the biggest complaints I heard after Civil War was that movie's great. Sharon Carter sucks, and like I I was kind
Really?
of indifferent toward her. I didn't have an opinion about
Yeah.
that, but like a lot of people
Yeah.
were really angry about her.
Oh.
Yeah, she's got so little screen time. I don't know. I didn't have an issue with her.
Yeah.
She also has like no screen time in this show either. It's just there to be like, I'm the villain now, I guess.
Well, it seems like it wants us to piece together a mystery with her that I'm just not interested in. So it's like, look, we gave her, she's rich and she's got this great apartment, and she keeps talking to people on the phone like real kind of foreboding like, and then oh, she's the power broker, and I'm like, I mean, I didn't put that together, but I'm not surprised, and also I guess I don't really care all that much.
Yeah, and I don't even understand how she would have built up this empire, considering there's 2 years between Civil War and Infinity War, and then she gets killed in the snap or the blip or whatever. So she's gone for 5 years,
And
and then
she's
she
done all
comes
this in
back.
what, 6 months, a year?
Yeah, a week.
She's brilliant. She's a genius, guys. She's better than Nick Fury.
Is Mandrapore just that like broken that in 1 week you can take over it? Like, I don't know.
Clearly, Nick Fury should have gone to Madripoor after Shield broke down. That's what he should have done.
Exactly. He would have had his whole like own nation.
Yeah, he would have had he would have had Shield Nation.
Yeah, and he could have slapped helicarrier like propellers onto the bottom of the island and then floated it up into the sky.
Oh man, let's get back to some super chats here, shall we? Tom, $5 super chat. Oh, Tom's doing that thing again where he references something that we're saying in the moment, and then 45 minutes later, I don't know what he's talking about. I'm sorry, Tom. It's supposed to be an allusion to the fact that in real life, they experimented on black soldiers. Oh, I guess the thing I was talking about earlier and trying to figure out the correlation.
True that.
John Callan, $2 super chat. Biggest crime of the show: killing Batroc the Leaper.
I agree. When he showed up at the beginning, I was like, "Oh, he's here, I guess." That's cool because it's basically just the opening of Winter Soldier, but on a plane instead of a boat. So you have to bring back Batroc, and then he comes in at the end because who cares? And then it's like, "Oh, he's dead now."
Because the thing wants to it's trying to look really clever by just bookending everything that had happened at the beginning, and some of it's kind of contrived, where it's like, here's all the stuff you thought would never come back because we weren't dealing with most of what we established at the beginning of the show in the show, and then just everything comes back at the end, including Batroc the Leaper.
Yeah, and the Flag Smashers are like, "Oh, we got this big criminal working with us, Z-list villain Batroc the Leaper, who is basically an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. cameo, and that he's the only one lame enough to show up, just like the main Wakandan."
Isaac and Ren in the comments both say that they don't they didn't catch if she was supposed to be snapped. Do we know that for sure? That Sharon
It's
was
an
snapped?
Endgame, yeah. You see her in Endgame.
You see her wearing it, like come back after
Like,
the snap.
No, like we're looking at like all the people that have blipped, and she's one of them.
Oh, it's a name on a list.
Yeah.
See,
And I think
Austin knows
those
that
about
kind of
it.
stuff.
No, like you see her picture, and it's like Sharon Carter, and then it flips over, and it's Nick Fury, and
Oh, I know
Captain
what
Marvel.
you're talking about. Okay, I remember that now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That it's canon. It was there. It was on screen.
Yeah. Well, and then there's people that are like, well, she's probably a Skrull, which I think is maybe even worse, because why would a Skrull turn into a disgraced like agent, take over an entire pirate nation, and then come back to the U.S. when they could just walk into the White House and become the president?
and pretend to be helping or help Falcon and Winter Soldier just so that, and like kill the bad guy at the end just so that they can get in the good graces of the government, so that they have access to secrets, because that's the whole reason she has her master manipulation plan, is just so that she has access to secrets.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Why does Martian Manhunter pretend to be Martha Kent in a scene that gives us exposition about Martha Kent? Oh wait, that's the wrong movie. Mr. Roboto, tell us super chat. Cap, they made Bradley via trial and error.
Okay.
I'm not totally sure what we're talking about there either.
Isaiah Bradley.
I guess how we got powers. I thought there was a line about that.
Yeah, it was just they all got like I think slightly different strains of it, and everybody else died but him. I think is all I thought was all it was.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Philip Kelton, I just have to read this because it's a super chat. Disney can't even handle Song of the South. I'm not gonna touch that. I'm just gonna move on.
Just wait until they make the Disney Plus reboot. It'll be a whole show.
Mr. Roboto, to super chat. Bucky did not take the serum, just the metal arm. We talked about that already. Philip, 50 Mexican pesos super chat. So thanks. Traumatize everyone by killing half the universe, and the Avengers traumatize everyone by bringing everyone back. Yeah, that's that. I mean, I guess that's Carly's philosophy. Gentleman Merc, that's a name I don't recognize. Welcome. A lot of guys, and thanks for the super chat. A lot of the guys got upset that the new Batwoman is black, so I can buy why Isaiah thinks a black Captain America would be unaccepted. I don't think the issue with most people was that she was black. I think it was that she wasn't just recast because people wanted to watch a show about that character, not about just some person as Batwoman.
The biggest issue is it was Batwoman, a show that is awful, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love it dearly. But it's awful. Like, you get mad with that show for anything.
And there's a nuanced thing there. I mean, like, yeah, there's racist idiots who get upset about whatever. I think that's a minority. There's a difference between being angry that you cast a black character and not wanting to be pandered to, because very clearly that show went, well, no one's watching this, how can we get viewers? I don't know. Maybe more people will watch if we make a really big deal out of how progressive we are with a minority character. They've done this before, they do this a lot. That's the CW's thing. So, like, if people were upset that she was black, it was probably more because of that than just you picked a black person. It's more complicated than that.
Also, earlier today, they put out the first image of Stephanie Brown from Batwoman.
I didn't know they were doing her.
And I saw people were really mad that they cast an actress that looks like Barbara Gordon. So people just get mad.
Yeah, absolutely. John Kelling. Oh, I missed this one. What would be your Steve Rogers Captain America conspiracy theory of where he disappeared to if you lived in the MCU? He is in a retirement home.
Captain America goes back in time and enters a different universe, which is the DCEU, where he meets Wonder Woman, and then he and Wonder Woman work together to do 9/11, and then they come back in time to take over the Earth, but like secretly, and nobody knows, and that'll be what Secret Invasion is about.
Brilliant.
That's my 2 cents.
I think there's some rights issues there, but it's, nothing surprises me anymore. Dan, do you have a conspiracy theory? Where is elderly Steve Rogers right now?
I think he is a local town county clerk. He's getting involved in his community. American democracy at work on the local level.
Well, I mean, that's cool of him and all, but you know what he could have done to help make the world better after the biggest crisis in human history? Not go back in time and become elderly.
True.
I had a conversation with Eric the other day. With Eric the other day about this. He blew my mind. He goes, "I don't actually think Captain America in that movie is as good of a person as we all think he is." And I'm like, "Why do you say that?"
He was just worthy to pick up Thor's hammer.
Eric goes, because he has to know that you're going to have this massive, horrible crisis where all these people, half the population gets blipped out for 5 years. They all come back. The world is in absolute crisis and tatters, to the point where America did, with the show anyway, America didn't think it needed a Captain America for 70 years, and now because of all of this, it does, and Steve Rogers went back in time and just lived his life? I don't know, seems a little selfish to me. I think Eric's got a point.
Yeah, it would have been really awkward if he, went back in time and he couldn't pick up the hammer anymore, so he couldn't bring it back to Dark World.
Eric says he's not, and I hadn't thought about this either. He says he's not even that great in Civil War because everything he does in that is because of Bucky.
Yeah, no, he's definitely going a bit crazy in that movie. And I wondered initially with Endgame if he could pick up the hammer after Civil War, but that's a whole other thing.
Philip, once again, thanks, man. Cap, why does Zemo think superpowers are bad? Because people with superpowers destroyed his country.
Yeah, they killed his family.
That's the reason, is that they're able to work with, their jurisdiction is wherever they are. Interestingly, like the lady from the Dora Milaje says in the show, and I wish we'd gotten into that a little bit, because Zemo could have also talked about the Wakandans, or at least the Dora Milaje, as being also part
scary.
of that whole thing. Yeah, exactly.
They're fascists. They just show up and they're
talk
we are
fascists,
the law.
yeah.
And it amazes me that we see Walker kill one of the Flag Smashers, and it's that's legitimately awful. Walker taps one of them on the shoulder, and they all decide that they're going to kill Captain America. And it's supposed to be this badass scene.
Thomas Ledbetter, Dan, given your background looking at American history, what is watered down in the racial issues? I don't agree, by the way. What about compared to Black Panther? And apologies if my question is too much.
Well, I don't know about Black Panther, but I just feel they don't really discuss any of how these kind of issues have affected Sam Wilson as a person in substantive ways. We have a scene where he can't get a loan. There's a scene where the cops are like, "Hey, are you doing okay?" And then the twist is, "Oh, we're gonna arrest Bucky instead." Haha, gag time. I don't know, these things are very serious issues, and I wish that they tackle them in a more serious way, I guess. Rather than it just being these things are going to exist for one scene and then we're going to move on. I just wish the show was more thematically about them, I guess. If you watch the Watchmen television show, the main character in that is a Black woman, and she deals with the fact that generations ago one of her ancestors was affected by things like the Tulsa race riots, where the Ku Klux Klan burned down a very rich and prominent Black community at the time, and how that sort of trauma has affected her generation after generation, and how the past rings in the present in some ways. I don't need this show to be as heavy as that necessarily, because this is a show for kids and their families. I understand that they can't get that dark with it, but I guess I just wish that it was a more thoughtful exploration of those ideas, if that's what you want to make your show about. Like, I don't need the show to be about racial issues if they don't want it to be. But the show kind of wants to be about those things, and also not discuss them at any sort of in any sort of depth, so no one gets upset about them, I guess. I don't know. Because it's a very controversial topic, unfortunately. Like, it shouldn't be, but it is very controversial.
I'm glad you said that. It's a thing that we should be able to talk about without like fear of reprisal and stuff. Like, let's let everybody speak their minds, and let's let the writers of the show like explore ideas.
Yeah,
and not have to be worried that like people on Twitter are gonna freak out about them because they didn't handle it properly. That's different than me saying you're not mature enough about it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to cancel the show or cancel these people for making what they made. But they're dodgy, they're mousy about it. That's not the way to handle it.
Yeah, and I think it's both sides. It's like, oh, like, you didn't handle this well enough, and the fact that you're handling it at all is some sort of sacrilege, because if you bring up politics in fiction, like, you are some sort of SJW wacko, which both sides of that equation, I feel like, are just insane.
Yeah, like it. You don't want a thing to just pander to you, but just because it's doing that, or just because it's talking about those things, doesn't inherently make it pandery. You shouldn't have to avoid dealing with anything in fiction.
It's not even like it's not even, this show isn't even like pandery. Like, it's
that's
just
what I was going to say. I don't think it is either. I don't think it's any. It's just business at the end of the day.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Just like, I just feel like it's very surfacey, and I wish it wasn't. Maybe I'm not taking it on its own terms, but if you want to make your show about racial issues, I would like that discussion to be thoughtful, is all I'm saying.
Oh no, you're definitely taking it on its own terms, because it's acting at the end like it's explored these things more than it has.
Yeah, for sure. That's true.
Here's $5. Anyone else disappointed that Zemo's purple line mask wasn't just to taunt the Avengers because he heard about Thanos? Here's $5.
He should have just been going around being like, "Take this, guys."
He just snaps a lot. That's brilliant.
Really sassy.
John Gilisano, $5 super chat. Didn't Steve just create a pocket universe for him and Peggy to live their life with the time travel? He didn't mess up the timeline, right? I'm still fuzzy on how all that works, and I don't want to get into the time travel shenanigans again. But the issue that Eric has with it is not that he messed up the timeline. It's that he went and lived the whole life, and now he's an old person when he could have come back like he was supposed to and like helped out after this like insane crisis that's arguably as bad as anything they've ever dealt with.
Yeah, it's that he was like, "Oh, we have a lot of work ahead of us. Nah, I'm gonna go chill out with my girlfriend." I guess I'll let these people
do it because it's a big anniversary movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Roboto, what if Daredevil became Captain America?
We can't have a blind Captain America. I will not stand for that. I need to be represented with my vision, okay? Although Daredevil and the Vision should be the next big Disney Plus show. I'd watch that.
Blind and Vision. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, Matt Murdock.
It should have come out in 2020, but it's too late now.
Sure. Matt Murdock would not be a good Captain America, I don't think. Obviously. Not even at all.
No, little too a little too ends justifies the means, and B a little bit too. It's weird because he's not like a shield guy, but he does have a little bit too much of that like compartmentalization thing that Fury does, where like Matt Murdock is on a need to know basis with people. Like,
Yeah, I I think Matt Murdock is a character who's too like he's too obsessed with the notion of justice. Like it's not a patriotic thing for him. Like just that sort of um on a small scale, like that's what he's concerned with. Captain America, I guess, like he has more of a broader view of like what the country means as a symbol and all of those sorts of
I
things.
was
Like
gonna
Matt
say,
Murdock is concerned with the same things as most of the Captain Americas that have existed.
yeah, you got to have somebody that sees the forest for the trees, and Daredevil's about the moment.
And he can't even see the trees, let alone the forest through them.
Chewbacca's lover. People just want characters to look like they do in the comics, not racist. Same as them taking the trunks off Batman and Superman. Basic nerd stuff.
I don't know what that means.
No, it was about
Is he talking about the Falcon suit,
the
or-
Batwoman thing.
Oh, the
No, it
Batman
was
thing.
this
Okay.
woman thing with hiring the black actress. That's why he said it's not racist. That people just want.
That's interesting. But with that particular case, I don't even think that it's, oh, she doesn't look right because she's a black woman in that costume. I think it's just, why would you pick a different, like, why would you make up a random character to be in that role?
She also didn't look good in that costume. It's terrible, and I love it.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they should have made her a completely different looking suit. She doesn't look good in that suit. And I don't think it's racist to say that. It wasn't made for her. Like, make her a different costume.
No,
Why are we
the suit
talking
never-
about this? John Kelling, should
that-
Spider-Man
should be talked
have shown up in the finale? I mean,
No.
I had that thought during the finale. I was like, I hate the show so much. I'd get some enjoyment out of Spider-Man coming here. And then the next day, we found out they actually wanted that to happen, and I thought
why
that
did
was
they
weird.
want that to happen?
Ew.
Just because they're in New York, like Spider-Man would naturally show up.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like this big like terrorist event. Like Peter Parker would be around.
See,
True.
I'm glad that
Uh,
didn't happen, because if they did it, it would have just been to call back to the moment where he picks up the shield in Civil War and meets Captain America, right? Like, one of the
No,
things
he should have been Captain America at the end of the show. He should have been like, "Oh, Falcon, you suck. I will be Captain America."
But
And then his next, like, because Far From Home takes place after this,
Yeah.
so that's a little awkward.
it does. but Austin, in all seriousness, though that would have been the reason they would have done it, right? Just so that they could do that scene all over again, because there's way too much of that in this show. Like, we have to keep calling back, and this is a point I meant to make earlier. We have to keep calling back to things almost like we're protesting too much to prove to the audience that we know the continuity and have seen these movies. Like, there's this fear in the writing. There's this defensiveness, because there's a lot of stuff that's really overwritten in this show. And I think there's a defensiveness in the writing where it's trying really hard to convince you that it's on the same level and it's a lot like a Winter Soldier and a Civil War. I told Austin yesterday, on a second watch, I realized it was reminding me a little bit of playing through Arkham Knight, because it's like people that just aren't experienced. Like, they're doing their best, but it's people that aren't experienced enough with the material, and maybe even as writers, like with that, trying to do a Paul Dini or trying to do the guys that wrote Winter Soldier. Like, it really feels like that.
Yeah, no, and I agree completely. Like, both of these things suck.
I mean, again, there's definitely stuff I liked in this. I will say that on a second viewing, I liked the third episode in Madripoor a lot more. I thought something was really super off about that episode on first viewing, and at this point, it actually might be my favorite episode, just because of all the Zemo stuff.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of see that. I think 2 is still my favorite, just because I like what they're doing with Walker in that episode. And the best scene in the entire show is just that they brought back Star Spangled Man with a Plan.
It's so cool. Yeah, I love that. That's why I say it should have been the opening of the whole show.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And then I'm just depressed.
Well, guys, that's the end of the super chat. Do you guys have anything else that you want to make sure that we bring up that we haven't talked about yet from the show?
Not that I can think of.
So, folks in the comments, last
Spider-Man.
call for super chats. Then we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here in about 5 minutes or so, unless a lot more folks have things that they want us to talk about. Go ahead, Austin.
I was just gonna say, Spider-Man, if he was gonna show up, would only be because they needed somebody to lift that giant truck at the end, and then they couldn't get him, so they were like, Falcon can do it now, I guess.
Dan, do you agree with Austin that is as absurd as he thinks it is?
Yeah, because he doesn't have any superpowers. He's just a dude.
Yeah, because Dan was the first person who told me about it. Apparently, I exaggerated it to Cap.
He way exaggerated it, and it wasn't anything like as bad as he made me think it was before I saw the episode.
I imagined it worse than what I would have said.
He told me about it before I saw it, and I was imagining Falcon without super soldier serum freaking picking up a truck and tossing it. That's what I thought happened, and he just...
I guess is like he uses his jetpack.
His jetpack, yeah. But the question is, would he have enough upper body strength to even be able to hold it up at all? Yeah. No, probably not, but like, it goes on too long, and maybe it doesn't work at all, but like, and there's a lot of weird stuff like that in this. Like, I don't like the way Battlestar dies and the way it's shot, and like all of that is really weird. So like, this show makes leaps like that, where it's like, in this universe, we're going to say that guy died, like, which is a super realistic way to die, but then other people take blows that should have killed them then. So, like, that's kind of a problem. So, yes, I'm with you. That truck lift is goofy. It's not anything like what I expected it to, so I was underwhelmed and almost a little disappointed.
But see, for me, because Dan initially told me about it, and he was like, oh, Falcon lifts up a car. And I was like, what? That's insane. And then I watched it, and it's this big armored truck. And I was like, that's way worse than what he said.
See, that's the whole thing with, like, Sam Wilson as Captain America. Like, he's just a dude who has done push-ups and ran. Like,
yeah, and he was beaten up by Ant-Man.
And Batroc. He almost loses to him.
yeah, exactly. And he's a Z-list villain, even in the MCU.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and there was a part that made me laugh when I was rewatching it during a fight scene with Carly, where she like kicks Bucky into a wall, and then turns around and punches Falcon, and he does like one of these, and he's just like perfectly fine, and they keep fighting. And I was like, oh, that's stupid.
Real quick, folks, I did a poll this morning on Square Offs. I'm doing more and more of these for shows, and if you've not voted yet, feel free to go over there. I just put a link in the comments to it. So this one is, which character were you most invested in watching Falcon and Winter Soldier? And right now we've got 96 votes, and Bucky is in the lead with 59%, and Sam has 41%. So that breakdown is a little different than I would have expected. Honestly, I I'm with. Oh, that's not the display I meant to go to. Hold on, folks. I'm not. I'm in the same place that you guys are, where like I was a lot more interested in Bucky's arc at the beginning, even though I'm much more of a Falcon fan. But I actually thought more people would say Sam, the way I've been hearing people talk about this show. So I'm surprised that is breaking down the way it is so far.
Yeah, I plead the fifth on that, but Bucky gets the most interesting stuff, but we do nothing with him for the majority of the show.
Yeah,
so I'm just kind of whatever on both of them.
With the writers of the show, and they said that the fans missed Bucky's like becoming a hero moment in the last episode, and that it was a failure of their writing.
That's awesome.
I was like, oh, Captain America 4 is gonna be great.
I think people also, because I did first time around, people also probably missed the kind of like pseudo redemptive moment for Walker, when he like chooses to go deal with that to like save people from that truck instead of going after Morgenthau. I totally missed that first time around, and so I like slightly more got why he was played slightly more heroic at the end, but
Yeah, well, I thought that moment was a little strange rewatching it because when he's talking to Lamar about whether they'd get the super serum or whatever, there's like a moment where Lamar's like, "Yeah, if we had it before, like, remember like this moment we had where like all these people died, like they wouldn't have died if we'd had it back then." And when I was rewatching it, I was like, "Oh, this should have been the moment where he saves these people instead of like killing the villains that he's after." But we can't let him have any like victory either. It felt weird to me, where I was like, that kind of feels like where his character arc's going in that moment. Again, it's jot notey, but
Yeah, the
like it
emphasis
felt
is
like a
just on the
payoff
wrong
to that.
syllable so often.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I guess it's
I
that he tried to
completely
save
missed that he
people.
even did that, and then it's like there's a whole scene or five missing because then we cut to something else, and when we come back, all of a sudden he and Bucky seem like almost like they're palling around.
Yeah, no, it does have that sense when they're running around together.
That was
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
weird. When he quotes Lincoln.
Yeah, and then Bucky is like a quip where he's like, "That's not okay from you."
Mr. Roboto $2 super chat. What if Deadpool became Captain America? I mean, that wouldn't make any sense, and it would just be like a silly cartoon what if thing, which is why
Are you trying to make me hate the show more, sir?
you'll see that in season 4 of Marvel's animated What If show.
Yeah, it'll be what if Deadpool was the Marvel Universe instead of kills the Marvel Universe, and it'll just be everybody.
Tom, $5 super chat. I feel like it has the opposite of the Netflix issue. It needs more episodes. I definitely felt that way by the end.
Yeah,
and I feel
agree
like
with that.
so far they are really struggling with the TV versus movie thing, where like they want to make movies that are the length of TV shows, and certainly that can work, but like they're having a hard time deciding where one should end and the other should begin. And again, two does not a pattern make, but Loki's gonna be real telling. Whatever
Yeah,
happens
when I
with that
was
show.
championing them, like at the start where they were like episodes can be however long they want, like they need to be because that's what we're focused on. And then this show's like completely underdeveloped. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I expected more out of this because I loved WandaVision. I really liked that show. And I expected it to kind of be on the same level as the writing and the character development in that show because I feel like we really got to know who Wanda is as a character in that show and like explored her in an interesting way. And I wanted to be sold on Sam Wilson as Captain America. I was ready to be invested. And same thing with what they wanted to do with Bucky, you know.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work out.
Yeah, see, WandaVision, and of course, like I felt differently by the end of that show than I did at the beginning, but I think overall that's a better show than this. Like that whole idea is really hard to pull off, and like I give it kind of more passes because it's taking some risks and it's trying some crazy stuff. This show, like, I'm not saying that again the social commentary is easy to pull off, but just doing a follow-up thing with Falcon and Winter Soldier as dual protagonists, that should be really hard to screw up.
Yeah.
Like, I had no reason to expect this to not be great. Like, that should be really hard to screw up.
Yeah, and like I have issues towards the end with WandaVision, but I think they nail everything with Wanda and Vision, which are like the core things you need to get right in that show. While here, I don't care about anything. And WandaVision, I think, is ultimately in like my top. I think it's like my number 10 in my ranking on the MCU. This is in my bottom 3. Like this show sucks.
Bob the Hun, $5 super
Yeah,
chat.
I mean,
Sorry.
like, in WandaVision, like, I really liked the supporting cast. Like, I was really surprised that Monica Rambeau being in that show didn't feel shoehorned in, and that I love. Like, she's one of my favorite things about that show. She's awesome, and I'm like kind of looking forward to Captain Marvel too, just to see her now. But none of the supporting characters in the show that weren't like pre-established I'm interested in. Some of them that I was interested in before I'm not anymore, like Sharon Carter, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't care what happens
I
with
mean,
that
with the
character.
exception of Walker, let me ask: is that unsalvageable now? Like, can we stay invested in that character after what happens through the show?
It depends on what they do, I guess.
I'm
Yeah.
just not sure. Yeah.
But I also think like with WandaVision, um, like you go from Endgame to Doctor Strange 2, like Wanda's in a completely different status quo. The ending of Endgame is Falcon's Captain America now. The ending of this is Falcon's Captain America now. Bucky's Bucky, Zemo's back in prison. This is ultimately just a hey, we need to make people okay with Falcon being Captain America. And like for me, I was excited about that after Endgame. I was like, that sounds pretty cool to me. And they completely like trashed that, in my opinion. Like, I have no interest in Captain America moving forward.
I mean, I just honestly I want different writers because I don't think it's unsalvageable. But I think that there's if you did it right, I think it would potentially feel somewhat retconny with his character. Like if because I didn't think of this until I was watching that behind the scenes featurette about this show, and in that they show the scene from the end when Steve gives him the shield, and I'd never thought of this until I watched through this show twice. But the look on his face when he gets the shield isn't like I can't live up to this. I'm afraid of being Captain America. It's this is going to be. It looks like this is going to be hard, but I'm up to the challenge, and it's amazing that he picked me. Like that's the look on his face.
They retcon it a bit, I think, with what his opinion was, because the
Yeah, I
ending
think so
of
too.
Endgame is very, very like triumphant, like, or I guess not like super triumphant, but it's like yeah, like Falcon's Captain America, like he's gonna take on this role, and then you get to this, and it's like oh, like you're giving me the shield, like oh, I don't want to be Captain America, and that's just not how it plays at the end of Endgame.
I mean, I would say that for getting that scene, I don't think it's in the show with respect quite the way you're talking about it because I get why he might be apprehensive about that and like again, if it was handled more maturely, the racial issues, that's fine with me. I get why he might feel that way, as much as I can. But like, it just doesn't seem consistent with how he seemed to feel about it. They latch onto that line where he says the shield feels like it's someone else's, and they make that the thrust and the crux of it. But just because he said that doesn't mean he was unwilling or that he thought it was a bad idea. Like maybe he rethinks it after he's talking to Steve. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't make that work, but like, he does seem a little retconny.
Yeah, it'd be like if Iron Man 2 opened up and you get like the I am Iron Man scene and he's like, I am Iron Man, I am Iron Man's like master. He's my bodyguard. It's like, oh, that's not what you guys did last time.
Two more, and then we are probably out. Bob the Hun, $5 super chat. The problem with shows going political is that you need to agree with the writer's views to find certain characters sympathetic when it's done poorly.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I would argue when it's done poorly, I tend to just not buy the characters as people in the first place. So like, it wouldn't matter if I agreed with the writers or not. It's just you didn't get me there. I'm not believing this is a real thing that is going on.
Yeah, I feel like poorly done politics and things, it's like if you agree with it, I feel like depending on how poorly it is, I guess, you either feel like you're being pandered to or you're just like, but this still sucks.
Yeah.
And when you don't agree, it's like, well, this sucks and it's kind of stupid.
I hate it more when I agree with it because obviously, you would want those views to be, presented and represented in, a more sophisticated way, where you're like, oh, well, this isn't going to win anybody over on this argument.
Yeah, I feel like the best stories like about political issues are about like there are characters that represent a variety of political views and they have like discussions about it that make sense for the characters and like maybe the author sympathizes with one of them more than the other, but it's not necessarily about like proclaiming that the author is like an all-knowing like political genius. It's kind of like these are the kind of things that are happening in our society. Let's have a discussion about them. There are people that come from different places, and even if there are people who are horrible and terrible and their ideas are wrong, like those need to be articulated, and like we need to understand why those people have those beliefs in the same way that we need to understand why people that have the correct beliefs have those beliefs, I guess. I don't know. um I always feel like when, like, it's always cringy, like there are many political things I've read that I agree with, and they present them in such a way where I'm like, well, this is just like an 8-year-old that happened to have been told the right thing, and they think the world is very simple. I don't know.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
it's
no,
they don't even
absolutely.
understand the reason that I agree with them. They got there in a
yeah, exactly.
superficial way.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I like when we do politics, when we kind of go into both sides and actually have a discussion as opposed to just being like, here's the thing that you need to believe we all agree with, right?
And yeah,
Yeah.
and I because what is the point of that, first of all? And it just doesn't. Um, I don't know. I think it sets us back to a degree. Like I like things that are extremely well argued and thoughtful, and that I don't agree with, because it challenges me. It makes me think about another side, and give me a perspective that I didn't have before. Like I want, usually, depending on what we're talking about, in argument, that understands different sides of an issue. But I also think it's okay for a piece, like Dan was saying, to like make it clear what the author's perspective is, and let him make an argument for a thing, because there's a much different, it's very different to make an argument saying, here's X, Y, and Z why I think you ought to consider the way I think, versus you agree with me, don't you? Like that's really different. And fiction
Yeah.
can do that first thing, and it could be really powerful, and I think that's it's wonderful when it's done right. And that's different
I
from being pandering, and it's different from being forced.
I agree with you. Like, specifically with superhero things, the example I always go to when people say that comics shouldn't be political or whatever is like, do you like the X-Men? Because, like, if you've ever read any of the seminal stories with the X-Men, one of my favorite ones is God Loves, Man Kills. And the villain in that is William Stryker, and he's very different from the movie version in that he's like this very bigoted, like Christian preacher kind of person. He's a very specific archetype in American culture, and he's clearly the villain. But Claremont shows why he arrived at the conclusions that he has, and they are logical. And like as to why he went down such a dark path, and why this hatred in him exists. You don't sympathize with the hatred, but you understand why it exists. And it's more of like a tragic, like, I can't believe that like this person arrived at these conclusions, rather than like he's a cartoon character, like you don't like endorse what he's saying. All of the things that he's saying are wrong, but you understand why he believes those things. um I find that much more interesting than like, this is the belief people have. Isn't it terrible? Yes, it is terrible. Why is it terrible? Why have they arrived at these conclusions? Like, people have the kind of beliefs, even if you don't agree with them, for a reason. You know, they aren't just like brainwashed automatons, I guess. I don't know. I find the exploration of evil people useful and interesting. Like, we need to understand even people that are consumed with hatred.
And if I'm
Um,
supposed to find it terrible just because a like mainstream official like registered trademarked like movie or TV show made by Disney or whatever told me it is, that's a problem.
yeah. Like, we need to
They're the
understand.
authority, so we need to listen to what they're saying. Like, no, you got to present the argument.
Yeah, like, you like to understand, like, to not become an awful person, you need to understand why other people have become awful. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you can't win people over if you can't sympathize with them in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Magneto is also another perfect example from the X-Men, because Claremont, like, he grew up, he spent a lot of time like in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict when he was younger, and like got to like talk to people from both sides of that. He was like kind of a guy living in tents, like around the desert in that area. He did a lot of crazy stuff. So like he tried to kind of bring the, like, as an outsider to that situation, like the people involved in a very intense conflict. Like, there are points to both sides of that sort of equation.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah,
talk about.
absolutely.
Bob the Hun. Also, another thing is having characters giving speeches meant to be profound, but it's only profound if you agree with the writers. Again, when I see even a speech I agree with that's like really obvious and really oversimplified, I don't think it's profound. I think it's just too obvious. It doesn't matter if I agree with it or not. And we didn't talk about that very much, but that speech that Falcon Cap gives at the end of this is long in the tooth. It's overwritten, and I don't buy that it would have solved anything.
No, and like the writers completely fail in that they get to set up what the issue is, and then they also don't have an answer where they're
Like I said earlier, yeah.
Falcon's only answer is do better. You guys need to be nice now.
I do think the notion, like this show is all concept and not execution for me personally, and that like
Yeah,
I get
absolutely.
I get the value in saying, hey, nobody in our contemporary society that have differing views are willing to listen to each other and have a reasonable discussion about really anything, especially on the internet. And like that like the notion of people need to from differing perspectives need to sit down and try to figure out how to solve problems and understand each other and not look at each other as enemies inherently because of their identity or where they come from or their background, whatever. That is a very good notion. I just don't feel like the show explores that idea enough for it to be thematically resonant, I guess. Like there's a little bit of it when Falcon is talking to Carly and he's like, I agree with your fight, but I don't really understand why he would agree with that.
Me neither.
It it's all concept over execution.
I do like it in that speech when he says, like, I don't like it when he says don't call them terrorists, but I do like it when he says, you haven't stopped to think about why they did the stuff they did. Like, and I also like it when he says you don't want to see 2.0. Like, this is just gonna keep happening.
Yeah.
That whole thing is good, but but it goes off the rails, and then it saves the day at the end. Which part of the reason I don't like that is obviously just because it's a real standard kind of trope and cliche that we do in superhero fiction. Oh, a speech saves the day, you know. Oh, so I say superhero fiction. Also, Rocky IV. But I digress.
The notion of like one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter is an interesting idea. I mean, like,
Sure.
the American founding fathers, when they founded this country, they used to burn down loyalists' houses. They used to tar and feather people in the streets. Like, those are terrorist tactics. But because they won the war, people in this country remember them as visionary revolutionaries that were good and all of these sorts of things. And that kind of idea it would be potentially interesting. I just don't think it's thematically in the show until Falcon starts talking about it.
And Falcon, and part of the reason it doesn't work is because Falcon is really inconsistent, where he basically calls her a terrorist to her face, and then later is like she's not a terrorist. I don't understand where you land on this. But like they could have even maybe had the Flag Smashers do all the same stuff they do and won me over with the idea that you're talking about, Dan. But it might have been more effective if they were acting more like the revolutionaries that you're talking about, because the kinds of tactics they were using was kill innocents that have nothing to do with this and take random hostages. And like they weren't. I just don't think the Flag Smashers are consistent in the people they're going after.
No. And I thought they were written very inconsistently. One of the things that I thought was really strange was when what's the name? Battlestar, the sidekick of John Walker's version of Captain America, he dies, and all of the Flag Smashers, like especially the main lady with the red hair, Carly, she's like acts shocked, like, oh my god, we killed a person. I'm like, I just saw you blow up buildings like a few episodes ago where you killed hundreds of innocent people and didn't think anything about it. Like, is it just because it's happening in front of your face that you're having this realization that, oh, this is bad? I didn't understand why terrorists that have murdered innocent people, like you said, for their cause are so like affected by seeing this guy die in front of them, and like that's a big deal for them.
Maybe superficially, it's just to make the audience feel more sympathetic toward her.
Yeah, I don't know.
But Falcon's whole thing also seems to just be, well, they have motivation, but like every villain has motivation. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, like, I understand the notion of like, okay, like people are fighting against you, try to understand why that's happening
Mhm.
um to try to settle the conflict in a way where you're not just completely just killing them or whatever. That's a good notion. That's what diplomacy is all about. But I don't think it discusses those issues in any sort of interesting way to warrant them that speech being resonant at all, I guess.
Yeah, and it feels weird when he's like fully willing to go and talk to Carly, even though he doesn't really know much about her. But when Walker's is like freak out, he doesn't really try to talk him down. Like there's like maybe 30 seconds where they're like, "That wasn't cool, dude." But like that entire scene is just them like, "We're gonna take the shield now,"
Yeah.
and it feels weird to me that like you you were more willing to give the benefit of the doubt to these terrorists
Then
but
John Walker.
the John Walker, yeah, and there's no mention of like, yeah, your friend died, like that's really awful. Like I understand, like whatever. It's just here we
I
go.
I thought it would have been interesting too to have some kind of exploration, like John Walker kills this smasher person who is, they've participated in killing all these innocent people, and then Steve Rogers is a soldier during World War II, like he killed Nazis, like
Yep.
we see shooting guns and stuff at them, like he had to have killed some people.
Not only did
Um,
he kill people, but he says, and this is one line in Winter Soldier, but it's a poignant line. It's not played as a throwaway, offhanded thing. There's a line that Steve Rogers has in Winter Soldier where he says that during the war they compromised and he did things he wasn't proud of. Steve
yeah,
Rogers was also not perfect. And even back then felt like he had to do some necessary evils and was never comfortable with it. And this show acts like, very simply, back then a hero didn't have to ever do Shades of Grey, but now we do. In the same
yeah,
continuity where he says that. It's a problem.
yeah. I just thought they would have, like, that seems like a natural thing to compare John Walker as a character to Steve Rogers, but
Absolutely.
you know.
Mhm. Well, we even like steal the shot from First Avenger where he like kicks down the door while he's holding the gun,
Yeah.
which doesn't really make sense in this show because he like kicks down a door and then walks through the building stealthily.
That's true.
Whatever, we it was a scene we all remember.
What about Falcon was really sympathetic to the terrorist? He just ignored the woman bleeding to death who saved him.
That's like that's horrible. Yeah, and it's like one of their friends. Like Sharon should be the power broker at that point. Like
Yeah.
That's why
Sam
she
left
turns
her
into the.
bleeding, and
Plus
he
it's... Sorry.
like delicately carries out Carly like she's this big friend that he's always had, and like comforts her while she's dying.
Like the
While
cover of Death in the Family.
yeah, and then Sharon's just bleeding out right next to him, and she's just saved his life.
Yeah.
Busted said, Cap, I'm
Insane.
surprised you aren't as on board with Sam's speech, considering how much you go for Picard saving the day with speeches. I mean, it's an issue.
Execution, sir.
It's an execution thing, and it's a case by case kind of thing. Also, Picard saving the day with speeches is usually like a microcosm thing. It's not like he tells a senator that he should do better, and then vaguely things seem like they're gonna be okay at the end. Like it's different
Yeah.
from that. Also, Picard's speeches don't always work. Like it's not that I like them because they solve everything. Like sometimes Picard will say something brilliant that will then make a person like think, consider things more, and maybe make a better choice later. But it's just the speeches themselves; they're usually really well written. This was not overall.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Um, I guess I was just expecting more from this because the Captain America movies have always been the highest quality series in all of these, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it shows just like how good the Russos were when they leave and just everything falls apart. I guess them and Marcus and McFeely because they wrote First Avenger too.
Oh,
But like,
Yeah, somebody asked me the other day how much I wanted to see them come back.
well, right now, like, please come back. I'm down on my knees.
yeah. Let's go. I wish they did.
Tom, $5 super chat. Before WandaVision, people were a little apprehensive about Marvel TV shows. If we had gotten this before WandaVision, would MCU TV be better or worse? I think people would like WandaVision more than they do if this had come out first.
Yeah, potentially. I mean,
although I'm also hearing a lot of people really happy with this show, so who knows?
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say. I feel like the reception in the general the general zeitgeist seems to be positive, but that's kind of what happens with every MCU thing. Like there are a lot of I don't like Endgame at all, and everyone loved that, and people thought Ant-Man was great, and I don't like that. I'm just kind of used to at this point most of the stuff Marvel puts out gets a positive reception, kind of regardless of what it is.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the show is as enjoyable as the Captain America shield to the head. But...
Yeah.
What about Captain America was great because the Iron Man sequels were not so good. I mean, I don't agree with that. I don't think it's just a comparative thing. I would have loved Winter Soldier regardless of the fact that Iron Man 2 wasn't great. And I'm trying to remember my history now. I guess Iron Man 3 had come out by that point, and I think that movie is fun.
Yeah, it was the year before.
Winter Soldier's a better movie than that, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I have
not by a ton. I mean, Iron Man 3 is a good movie.
Too, but, I like the basis of it, I guess. Iron Man 3 I like a lot. But yeah, Winter Soldier's a better movie than Iron Man 3.
Speaking of Iron Man 3, we'll finish up here in a second. Watching that... that behind the scenes thing, they said something that I found like the one of the producers or the director, I can't remember who, said something just preposterous, or at least that I thought was kind of preposterous, which was they were naming buddy cop movies that they were like influenced by and that they were trying to lean most toward, and they said that the movie that they most wanted this to feel like was Lethal Weapon. And I'm like, well, okay, you didn't manage that, but also, because there's some decent comedy between Sam and Bucky in that second episode, but after that, it's few and far between, and very often feels like a little inserted in where it's just not even natural. But it made me think, oh man, I sure wish Shane Black would have come back and done this show, because he would have been great for this show.
Yeah, it would have been a lot better. It does have that, everybody needs to be more quippy. When you get, Falcon and, quipping and stuff with Bucky, all I can think of is that scene in Civil War where he's telling Spider-Man off for talking while fighting.
Well, that's really funny. But also, did you notice that we get less and less of that as it goes along? And maybe it's just because the show takes dark turns and they feel like it's not appropriate to do that. But then when they insert them, I'm like, okay, maybe you should have left that stuff out entirely. I don't know. It just seems kind of inconsistent the way that's written. It's hard to articulate, because I guess it would be easier for a person to hear that and be like, oh, okay, so you want things to just be joyless, right, Cap? I'm like, no, I just want it to feel natural when a person says a thing.
Yeah, it's because they took 3 seconds of interaction between them across all the movies. And it's basically just the Civil War, and they made that their dynamic of the show.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, anyway. Anything else you guys want to make sure we bring up before we bid everybody farewell?
Not that I can think of. I just wish it was better. It's just overall disappointing, I didn't hate it as much as Austin and Connor did. I was with it for the first 4, like I said before. I was on board for most of it. I wanted to like it, but unfortunately by the end I feel like it just didn't come together for me personally.
And to be fair, nobody hates this more than Connor.
Yeah.
Clearly. I think I enjoyed watching it more than Austin and Connor, obviously, but the more I talk about it, the more frustrated I find myself.
Yeah.
Austin and I have been talking back and forth about this, and every time I write something to Austin about the show, I'm just I'm so confused. I don't understand what's happening.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's Bucky's talking to a woman. I'm confused. Why? He's friends with her grandfather. No.
Well, anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed our Spoilercast. Thanks so much for sticking with us. We will be back again with more fun stuff here on Geekvolution. Later this week, DJ and I are going to do a follow-up show to Marvel Mania Phase 2, which we just finished. We're going to do a ranking show. I don't know yet if that's going to be Tuesday or Thursday, but one of those days this week will be a ranking show. And then coming up in the not-too-distant future is going to be Maya and Austin's live discussion about Simpsons Season 2. I will let you know later in the week when exactly that's going to happen, but we've been really enjoying doing that. We did the first episode a few weeks ago, and it was the most fun I've had all year, I think, and I can't wait to get back into that and do more of that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So more fun things coming for you soon on the channel. Hope you will pop back in and enjoy it with us. And in the meantime, I was Captain Logan. Dan, thanks so much for doing this with us, man. Your perspective was greatly appreciated, and it made a huge difference and mattered a lot to me that you were able to make it. So thanks so much for doing it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a good time. I enjoyed talking about it with you guys.
And also Austin was here.
Yeah, I like talking about it, but not with you guys.
Or awful.
You guys really brought my mood down.
Austin, thanks for rewatching it, because I know you were really not looking forward to that, and that was really, really cool of you to do.
No, it's all good. Gotta take the sacrifice. Gotta jump on those grenades.
He's got a helmet that protects him.
Yeah, I'm gonna be Captain Canada in my Alpha Flight movie.
Which is really popular there in Canada.
Yeah, I'll get to be in the museum. It'll be really good.
It's not popular there. Nobody in Canada knows what that is.